The mother of the Oxford school shooter came to a close this week. She was found guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, which could mean years behind bars.
What does it mean, though, for the future? The trial for her husband, James Crumbley, starts next month. And what does it mean for victims' families? Joining us now to provide some insight into those complicated issues, Michigan attorney Jamie White. Jamie, good day to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Well, start off with your reaction. I mean, is this the verdict you expected? And again, I guess they went, 11 hours into deliberations, causing some speculation that there was not a conviction in sight.
You know, so I was one of the contributors for Court TV on this case, and so watched the most of the trial, if not all of the trial. And, you know, it was fascinating from a couple different points of view, guys. I think that there was politics involved, right, at the end of the day, because these parents were not accused of shooting anybody. You know, they really were accused of being irresponsible gun owners in the face of a young man that had clear problems in allowing that access to the firearm even after being notified by the school that there were real concerns. So the verdict didn't surprise me. You know, I spend half my year in northern Michigan, and I'm a hunter and I'm a gun owner. And I think what this case did was hopefully remove some of the politics from the conversation. To argue that we have a epidemic in this country regarding school shootings, you'd have to be living on a different planet to deny that's the case. And I think too often we get into guns versus non-guns and that sort of argument. And I think that the Oakland County prosecutor really dialed in and took this issue away from Congress and members of state legislatures and said, if you're not going to do anything, we are. And we're going to start holding people accountable if the circumstances, in fact, support it. So I wasn't surprised by the verdict. I know Shana Smith. I've worked on opposite sides of cases with her, and I respect her. I think she did a valiant job keeping that jury out for 11 hours, because this was not a case of who did it, right? Who robbed the bank, who sold the drugs, who fired the shot. I mean, we knew the facts of the case for the most part. This really was a legal question that I've already discussed, and is that, are we going to hold the third party responsible for the behaviors when it's a parental guardianship at issue?
And Jamie, do you think this is going to change how courts address this issue in the future?
Well, I think certainly prosecutors around the country are going to look at other cases that are similar. This case was particularly egregious for the reasons I've already mentioned, but even going back to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, if you recall, where some people were shot and murdered. He was acquitted ultimately, but you know, his mother had bought him an AK-47. He wasn't old enough to have it, or an AR-15. I'm sorry, and you know, he went off and used it, and ultimately was acquitted by a jury. But I think we're going to see prosecutors look at these situations much more carefully going forward, and more importantly, I think parents. You know, whatever side of the gun argument you're on, if you are a gun owner or a gun proponent, what have you, I think that people are going to take a second look at, you know, providing access to their children. And certainly when a child appears to have some mental health disabilities, even more so. The other thing that I think we're going to see come out of this, guys, you know, when it comes to reports of sexual assault, for example, if a sexual assault is reported to what we call a mandatory reporter, a teacher is an example, a doctor is another example, a failure to report that allegation to law enforcement is in fact a crime. And that doctor and that teacher can be held accountable. Now, in this case, they did contact the parents, and I think they should be credited for that. But if we're going to see any change in the law, that would be something that would not surprise me, where there's a level of criminal liability when you have some information that a child has a weapon and you fail to report it if you fit a certain category of our society.
Jamie, Eric and I were talking about this just the other day, obviously when the verdict came out, but there's some level of debate, obviously, and you were paying much closer attention than we were, or the average viewer probably was, but some level of debate about, holding parents accountable for what their kids do versus, mom knew that the shooter had the gun and didn't even tell the school when they told her about their concerns for his behavior. So where does that argument go from here about, well, you can't blame me for, Johnny stealing a car, XYZ offense? How far down the line does this go? Where is there a new line being drawn?
Well, I think there is a new line that's been drawn. How far and how broad that line is or becomes is certainly a concern. We don't want to see parents who are doing the best they can to raise a child, and for reasons outside of their control, that child, commits an act of violence or other sorts of crime. But we do already have situations where parents are held accountable. If I have 3 teenage boys, and if I, have a party in my home and allow them access to alcohol, and they go out and somebody dies in a car accident as a result of that alcohol, I'm going to be held legally responsible, probably under the same theory. Again, we have safeguards in place, and we've seen cases before where parents have been held accountable, maybe not criminally, but certainly civilly, where their child gained access to a weapon. Here, I think the unique thing, again, is this gun debate that has just really ravaged our country, in particular as it pertains to school shootings, something that, I think bothers any parent, regardless of your position on weapons. To not be able to send your child to school safely is insane. My children talk about these drills they have all the time, and it's just, I I can remember the tornado drills when I was a kid. You get under the table,
right under your desk,
right? But this is something very different, and I think that the conversation has started, and it's going to continue. I think this is just the beginning of it, and hopefully, at the end of the day, schools and leaders in our community and parents can work together and find ways to make sure that their children are in a safe environment when in school.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, in our last minute, go ahead.
No, I was to say.
So, within our last minute here, Jamie, something I wanted to make sure the viewers are clear on is it's not that, the parents owned a gun and the kid got access to it when he shouldn't. It's the negligence. Now, do you think this would have turned out differently if, say, both parents had made active attempts to address what they were warned about from the school? Like, say they had set up appointments with a doctor and then this happened.
Yes, I absolutely think that. And, there's another factor that gets overlooked here. Their parents, they were in fact straw buyers. To buy a handgun in Michigan, there are certain requirements. This young man met none of them. So there was multiple levels of negligence that maybe are outside the scope of some other school shootings we've seen. But I do believe if you take away even one of those factors, get the child help or have the gun secured, we would have had a different outcome. And I can only speak for myself, but, I do, again, I'm a hunter and I have weapons, but I can tell you it would take a nuclear bomb for my kids to get access to my weapons. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm just suggesting that sort of environment, I don't even think these parents would have been charged.
Well, Jamie, we know we've got James Crumbley's trial coming up next month. There will be another opportunity for us to connect with you, and by then there will be a new set of state laws that have taken effect that are set for next week. So it will be interesting to get your perspective on that, hopefully, once March rolls around. Jamie White, thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure. Good seeing you guys. Take care.
Have a good day, Jamie.